This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, promoting the free enterprise system to enhance economic competitiveness. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to the newest member of the Senate of Virginia, Senator Kenny Alexander. Kenny, you've been on as a House member. Now you've been sworn in as a senator. Delighted to have a chance to have a conversation here with you as you get ready to begin your first term coming up in the Senate.
Yes, thank you, David, for having me.
Yes. I was looking back and seeing that when you were first elected, it was a special election in 2002. And then a special election here in 2012, about a little bit more than a decade apart.
A decade apart, yeah.
Yes. So as you tell our viewers some of your thoughts as you make the transition from number 32 in the House, I believe, to number 40 in the Senate.
Yes. Well, first of all, I would certainly be remiss if I didn't mention Yvonne Miller,
Yes.
who I am succeeding in the Virginia State Senate, who served both in the House in the district that I now or did serve in the House, and also a trailblazer in the Virginia State Senate. And she passed on July the 3rd after a long battle with cancer. And so I'm honored to be able to finish her unexpired term after 10 years of serving in the House.
So House committees that you served on and got risen to some seniority there among House Democrats. Now you'll be awaiting some word coming up about what your Senate committees will be.
Yeah, not at all. I have not heard of any committee assignments as of yet. I was able to be appointed to the powerful Rules Committee in the House, as well as Commerce and Labor and Education and Privilege and Elections. Became the most senior member on the Education Committee, having served on the Education Committee for my entire time in the House. Hopefully that will have some influence on the decision makers when they decide to appoint the Senate committees. I will be awaiting those assignments.
Yeah, so those, our viewers would probably be interested in knowing that what typically happens at the chamber where you were serving, the Speaker makes the
That's correct.
assignments. The majority makes the appointments over in the Senate, and with the 2020 Senate and with the Lieutenant Governor siding with the 20 Republicans, I guess that the committee assignments, when they come, will really be coming from that portion of the Senate leadership.
That is correct. It's a different state of affairs as it relates to Senate, the appointments. You're right, the Committee on Rules and the majority party makes the assignments in the Senate, and in the House, indeed, the Speaker himself makes the committee assignments. So it's a different environment.
Right. Well, now, were there some issues that you've been working on in the House very recently, maybe even the last session, that as you move to the Senate that you see as some of the issues that you are hoping to champion over in the Senate?
Of course. One of the things I have often dealt with is education. Being on the Education Committee for a decade, is this uniformity in education. We are moving towards college-ready students in our K-12 setting. However, if you are going to have college-age students or college-ready students and truly no child left behind, we should certainly include all children, regardless of where they are receiving instruction. When we talk about college-ready kids or No Child Left Behind, we're primarily talking about public school kids. But all children in Virginia should be considered and to be ready for college and not left behind. That includes children who are homeschooled, children who are attending parochial or independent schools, and children who have special tutors. So I think that we need to have uniformity and some type of curriculum with some certainly some leeway for specialty, but there should be uniformity in our delivery of education for those kids who are school-age kids, K-12. That's one of the things that I am working on. Of course, transportation. Mm-hmm. I think that we need should look at an alternative to the tolls. Tolls aren't popular in Hampton Roads. Tolls aren't popular in Northern Virginia, and tolls aren't popular here in the Richmond corridor. So I think that we should have a meaningful, viable, sustainable revenue stream to buy down the tolls or to alleviate the tolls so that we can certainly provide the highway construction and highway maintenance that is needed in the Commonwealth, so that the Commonwealth can certainly continue to be competitive with our neighboring states.
You know, it was interesting, the chamber that you have left, the most senior member, Delegate Lacey, Putney introduced a bill to another penny on the sales tax.
That's correct.
For transportation, and to the best of my knowledge, I think what happened, the bill didn't even get a vote.
That's correct.
In the House Finance Committee. There was not the will.
It was left.
It was left left there, left, and our viewers may know it left and it died.
That's
so
correct.
It would have to be reintroduced. So if it's not sales tax and it's not gas tax and not tolls, then people are going around the circle. Looks like.
David, I think that what has happened, some of my colleagues have taken, as you know, a no tax pledge.
Right.
A pledge not to raise revenue, a pledge not to raise fees, and a pledge not to raise taxes. They took an oath, they took a pledge, and that has compromised their position when these types of bills come to committee or if they make it to the floor. They are not willing, they don't have the political will to vote for those bills. So I'm working on something, David, that may be controversial. We may put the question to the people, to the voters, about some of these projects. I think it's been 10 years since we had a referendum on transportation. That referendum, that campaign was not well organized, was not well done. I think this may be a time, 10 years later, where you have congestion in Hampton Roads, Northern Virginia, and Richmond, and maintenance needs throughout our Commonwealth. I think the voters will be interested in either the elected officials having the political will to make the tough votes. If not, I think the people will vote for the revenue. If those projects are going to relieve the congestion and the gridlock and the problems that they're facing throughout our Commonwealth. So that's something that I'm considering offering as an alternative if we can't get those bills out of committee because of the no tax pledge.
Well, that would be an interesting approach to take, because even the decade you've been in the House, the transportation problems are much worse now than they were a decade ago.
And no new money. No new money since 1986 has gone to transportation. We have moved monies and we have diverted monies to transportation, but we have not raised any new money for transportation since 1986. As you know, there are more cars on the road. There are more people living in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we have had more development, more commercial and residential development throughout the Commonwealth since we had a major infrastructure improvement in the Commonwealth. So we are operating on roads that were dated for a generation ago, and we must address those needs if we're going to continue to be competitive and be the best state to do business, the best state to raise a family, and to be the best managed state.
You know, our viewers around the Commonwealth don't know you yet as well as the ones from Hampton Roads, where you live, but you are a businessman, you are a professional, you're a funeral director, I believe that coming into the Senate, you'll be the first one since, Senator Aniko Barker from Danville almost 25 years ago served. So,
Yeah.
You bring that expertise in on issues that relate to,
Right.
to funerals too, even as some of your colleagues bring in expertise on other issues.
That's correct, yeah. I family been in business since 1966. We're in our 46th year as a small family-owned business, and certainly we will bring those talents and those resources to the decision-making process. And served in local government as the Vice Chair of the Planning Commission, and served as a Civic League President. And so certainly we'll bring all of those experiences, and as 10 years in the House, we'll bring those experiences as well to the Virginia State Senate, and hopefully we can get some things done.
And even in this time prior to the 2013 session, some study going on cemeteries, I believe,
Yes.
and looking at some issues that pertain to those properties.
Properties, cemeteries, and funeral service, and cremation, and the whole death care industry has changed, as you know, David, over the past generation. People are opting for more choices as it relates to final disposition.
Well, in our closing minutes, what else do you want to tell your constituents in Southampton Roads and the viewers of the Commonwealth? What do you see about this time coming up in the Senate?
Well, certainly I thank the viewers and the constituents in the 5th Senatorial District for allowing me the opportunity to serve them for the remainder of the unexpired term of Senator Yvonne Miller. It's an honor and it's a pleasure, and we will continue to represent them as well as we have done in the House. And so we're just very appreciative that we have this opportunity to serve.
And someone will be following you in the House at a special election yet to be named?
Yet to be named, yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah, the governor has not called the special election as of yet. So we will await the governor's
right.
call.
Yeah. And we might tell our viewers that certainly at the time that we're having this conversation, as you're being sworn in the Senate, becoming a senator, we don't know, but we may be hearing in the next few weeks about that, or it may be the first of the year.
That's correct. I anticipate that the governor will do it before the 2013 session. The governor
Right.
has often said he wants the citizens to be represented by a person of their choice, and certainly he is aware of the 2013 session, and he himself wants a delegate or representative in place
Right.
before the 13th session. So he's committed to that, and
Yes.
I think he will make the call so that that person can be sworn in and seated for the 2013 session.
Senator Kenny Alexander, welcome again to This Week in Richmond. We look forward to talking with you again in the near future.
Thank you, David, for having me.
We'd like to welcome Tom Moncure to this portion of This Week in Richmond. You've been on before with a different hat on with the Code Commission, but today we're going to talk about the seal of the Commonwealth of Virginia. You have written extensively about it. In fact, an article published recently in a magazine, and
Your magazine.
and we've got the seal to put up on the screen so that our viewers can see it as we talk. So tell us about it, because most people, if they've seen the seal, they know something about that one side with the one person.
Well, it's a two-sided seal, but I've always, my fun question to high school groups has always been that if the dead guy on the ground represents tyranny, what does the half-dressed lady over top of him represent? And the 90 to 95 percentile answer has always been freedom or liberty, which is absolutely wrong. And that's why the fact that we've lost the other side of the seal creates a problem, because what's represented on the obverse, or front, I guess as you would put it properly, is an Amazon classical Amazon warrior, a lady, representing virtue, and more specifically civic virtue.
Civic virtue.
Civic virtue, and this is the concept that's kind of been lost to us, and was probably one of the most important elements to the founders. And if you read a lot of their writings, they absolutely considered us to have to be virtuous in order for a democratic system of government to continue. And what they meant by that was that we had to be both self-determinative and self-reliant, but at the same time unremittingly dedicated to the common good. And that's almost a contradictory sort of thought today. But when you go to the back of the seal, I don't know whether there's a seal. I don't know whether the seal.
Okay, let's have the other side of the seal up then, that shows the three.
Okay.
The three figures.
But what we have on the reverse side of the seal are three Roman goddesses: Ceres, harvest; Eternas, eternity; and Libertas, liberty. And what's interesting about the seal is that to the founders of this Commonwealth, it was a population that was first virtuous that triumphed over tyranny, and then liberty on the back of the seal was the result of our virtue.
I bet those high school students are interested in that and knowing that it's not liberty that's
Not
really.
liberty. But what I'm suggesting to you, and that's why the seal is, we've lost a very important lesson with the seal that was passed to us by the founders, and that is that liberty is first the result of our virtue. And we tend to have it exactly backwards today. We presume liberty without that without that component, if you will, of responsibility. And if you want to put civic virtue in a more modern context, the context would be responsibility, that we have certain responsibilities as citizens, that certain things are expected of us. And if you read the Virginia Declaration of Rights, you will find out that we have to have certain characteristics: frugality, moderation, temperance, and virtue. And these were the characteristics that were taken by George Mason in writing the Declaration of Rights. And if you know your Aristotle, he was basically outlining the type of characteristics that Aristotle and the classical philosophers had said that you have to be a citizen. And the dilemma before them was how to create a government that allowed the maximum amount of individual freedom without degenerating into pure license. And, or as Mason liked to put, how we guarantee liberty to our posterity. And the linchpin between classical liberalism, which is the idea of freedom or liberty, and classical republicanism, the idea of a structured government, how you balance these two, how you assure that we have sufficient governmental structure to assure continuation of liberty, at the same time as allowing the maximum amount of individual freedom, and the idea was virtue.
So civic virtue, if you fast forward from that time to the current time, those high school students or other groups that you speak with, what's their understanding, and perhaps yours too, of what really would, in 2012, what would constitute civic virtue?
Well, it's interesting because you hear the discussions today in the context of going out and voting.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some thought, or at least some representation today, that that's the maximum amount of effort that one puts in for citizenship. And to the founders of this Commonwealth, that would have been the minimalist effort. It's not only voting, but contributing actively to government, becoming an active participant in elections, an active participant in your local community. And it's to the founders of the Commonwealth, it was a much broader concept than just government. The idea that you had a responsibility on a social level to the community at large as well. There's also a component to the other side of the virtue coin is Christian virtue, which is also encapsulated in the Declaration of Rights, and that's that you practice Christian love, forbearance, and charity. And if you will, the Declaration of Rights neatly encapsulated, as the founders conceived it, both sides of the virtue coin, if you will. But the idea is that you have, that liberty comes inherently with responsibilities. And they're absolute responsibilities if you want the blessings of liberty to continue into the future.
So, over the years, you served in the House of Delegates, you worked in the Attorney General's office, you're now counsel at George Mason University, and certainly a scholar on many aspects of Virginia government and our history. Why have we lost this other side of the seal? And maybe the better question, what can we do to promote and to encourage people, the high schoolers, the civic organizations, those interested in civic virtue,
Right.
to see the side with the three people on it as well as the one?
Yeah, the problem with showing the obverse side, the one that we typically see, is the assumption that's freedom or liberty. In other words, that we have the right to do as we please, when we please, without regard for the consequences. We presume, and really the more proper context would be freedom rather than liberty, because freedom is tends to be a social construct, whereas liberty is more concerned with government and rights. But the idea that we have all of this freedom, we have all this liberty, and we don't have to do anything for it other than just demand it. And you see that in so many contexts, the idea that we have rights and we assert rights, we sue for rights, we demand rights. You see people down here at the legislature demonstrating for rights. Nobody's demanding responsibilities. And the question really should be, okay, if we are going to have the blessings of liberty, and that's exactly how the founders would have termed it, what is individually required of us to do that? And I don't know how many hours we have to really delve into that.
Yeah.
But you see it manifest in a number of ways. Civic groups, organizations, the Lions Club, the Kiwanis, these groups that represent those civic virtues are becoming less free. Their memberships are dropping. The idea that you have to participate actively not only in government but in the community at large is something that's lost to us. There was a book out several years ago entitled Bowling Alone, talking about the demise of these various civic organizations that had the greater involvement in the community. So how we re-inculcate that outside of talking about the Seal of Virginia, I don't know.
Well, it is a challenge. It certainly is. And before our time would end, we want our viewers to know that you do present this information in a longer form than we have even today to various civic groups and school groups, and they can find you at George Mason University on their website of George Mason as counsel. Here around the Capitol, we're delighted to still see you here and serving on the Code Commission and working here. But
take advantage of every opportunity I can, because it is singularly the most important concept to what George Mason and the founders had in mind when they kicked off this Commonwealth. And it is, I would suggest, singularly the one concept that we have most lost.
Well, the Honorable Thomas Moncure, whom I first met as a member of the House of Delegates, we thank you so much for being on This Week in Richmond and talking about the seals. And while I'm not your agent, I hope that people do contact you and you can present this information
And I'm
to
sure
them.
that, and I'm sure the pay will be double what I've
That's
got
right,
from
what you have
today as
received
well.
today. But thank you very much.
Sorry, Dave.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, promoting the free enterprise system to enhance economic competitiveness. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.